Greenlight Network presents Football Time.
Hey, and welcome to the Football Time Show. Week 4 is in the books, and I think Week 4 decided no one is good in college football, other than maybe Alabama, who remains good. There might be some okay teams. I think there are a lot of really bad teams after what we saw in Week 4. Are you ready to get into our recap of the games of the week in Week 4? Dynamite.
Yeah, it's a lot of craziness, but I think that's what I love about football is you never know what's going to happen week to week in college football. So, let's get into it.
You certainly don't know what was going to happen this week because it was a wild week. Let's start out on Friday night. Wake Forest went into Virginia and continued their win streak against Virginia. This makes 5 straight overall versus the Virginia Cavaliers for Wake Forest. Wake Forest really sort of dominated this game from start to finish. And this one bullied them up front, was able to run the ball nonstop. And then Hartman got going, play action pass. The Virginia passing game continued to look good, but a couple more injuries on the defensive line for Virginia. I'm not sure they were not throwing out fraternity students out there along the defensive line in the second half. But overall, Wake Forest really great start to the season for them.
Yeah, I was really big on this Virginia team after the first couple of weeks, and they've kind of let me down. Their defense just isn't there, but really, really impressed by Wake Forest. What's not to love? They got good defense, good offense, well-rounded offense. They could really make a run in this ACC and make their shot for the conference title.
Yeah, definitely so. I was going to get into a little bit of my rant here. I was driving into work from ESPN. One of their pundits came in and was like, the ACC is done. Nobody in the playoff for them. And I just wanted to be like, well, Wake's undefeated. Boston College is undefeated. If Wake or Boston College go undefeated and win the ACC championship game, are they not allowed to be in the playoff because nobody knows who the hell Wake Forest is? It confuses me. Yes, Clemson sucks. We'll get into that. Yes, Miami sucks. They did not suck this week for once. Florida State sucks. Yes. North Carolina sucks. Yes. So, the big time teams are not very good, but right now, Wake Forest is playing as well as anybody in football. So, why can't, if they go undefeated, work their way into the playoffs? Aren't they in the ACC conference too? Wouldn't them going undefeated be the exact same as Clemson going undefeated? It just sort of confuses me how we just look down upon because it's Wake Forest.
Well, it's not like the past few years that Clemson's had a great schedule.
Yes.
They've gone because they were undefeated and they were Clemson and they were in the ACC. But Wake Forest, if they go undefeated, now it's still a long ways off from that.
Yeah.
But I think they would have just as much right as an undefeated Clemson would be.
Yeah, I think that was already my concern. ESPN's maneuvering it. So, one loss, Ohio State, a one loss, Notre Dame or UCLA get in there over an undefeated Wake Forest. This is not to say I think Wake Forest is going undefeated, nor do I think BC is probably going undefeated. But it annoys me when we're like, oh, the ACC's done. No champion there. And I'm just like, well, Wake's undefeated. They've played as well as anybody. I think just because it's a tiny little school doesn't mean we don't give them a little bit of credit if they go undefeated. This is sort of why college basketball is a little more, fair. If Wake Forest went 28-6, they'd get a 2 seed. They'd have their shot at the championship. I'm not sure already if we are going to get Wake if they go undefeated in there, but a good win for Virginia on this one. Next up, you called it. And if West Virginia could learn how to close out games, they'd probably have a win here. But sadly, they are unable to close out games. I think that's a theme for a lot of these teams. Teams are winners and find ways to win games, and teams are losers and find ways to lose games. West Virginia had every chance of winning this game. Oklahoma was terrible. They managed to get a drive down there at the end. I don't even know really how to grasp this game. Both offenses didn't do much of anything overall, but Oklahoma made a drive, won 16-13 in this one. What'd you make of this game?
Yeah, I had West Virginia plus the 18.5. That was never really in doubt in this game, but I had them in an upset special parlay where, I thought I had a chance there for a little while. West Virginia, they were doing enough to keep this game close and in the lead, but they just couldn't quite put Oklahoma away. And I think that's, kind of where Oklahoma's, even in the games they've struggled, they've kind of been there. They haven't really gotten buried too far behind yet. And I don't know if how many more opportunities Oklahoma is going to get and come out unscathed.
Yeah, that would be my number one question. The number two question is, how long is Oklahoma sticking with Rattler here? I think we've gotten a season and change here to look at him. This Oklahoma offense has not been the Oklahoma offense we've seen in the past. And as always, sitting behind Spencer Rattler is a number one recruit, as is. So what do you make of this? Do you think maybe we start to see a little bit more of a backup quarterback coming in here?
I don't know if you do anything until I don't know. I guess you hate to wait till a loss to do something, yes. But I don't know. I guess, you bring Rattler's gotten worse.
Yes, that's what I mean.
He was better last year than he's been in any game this year. But I just, you've got an unknown behind him. Do you take out a guy who was supposedly one of the number one Heisman candidates going into the year?
Well, for an unknown Street, I still thinks he's a Heisman candidate because he was certainly tooting his horn in this game about his poise in the last drive. I wanted to be like, what about the preceding 20 drives where he was awful? So I don't know. It just seems like this offense was rolling for, 6 years worth of quarterbacks and Mayfield, Murray, Hurts, and then all of a sudden Rattler gets in there. And it's not rolling quite as much. It's uneven. I mean, to think of this West Virginia, Oklahoma game probably 2-3 years ago, this thing was played in the 50s and 60s.
Yeah.
And, right now these two teams were lucky to get to 16-13. If the two quarterbacks hadn't turned the ball over, I'm not sure anybody would have scored in the game. So it's just, I wonder how long Lincoln Riley, sits on this before, he pulls him. I think there's some other quarterbacks we'll talk about. I wonder how long they'll stick around. Now, the new thing is probably the second you bench Spencer Rattler, he decides he wants to go in the transfer portal and leaves. I don't know if necessarily that's a bad thing. I do look forward to that at some point occurring and some other team gets to hype him up and then be disappointed. But overall, Oklahoma continues to wear a Cinderella slipper. 4-0. I don't know if they remain that way all season long.
Still got a lot of tough games ahead.
Yes, they do. All right. Speaking of, this was one of my favorite games of the weekend. Arkansas plays Texas A&M in the Cowboys Stadium, dominates this game. I question whether they can dominate up front. They dominated up front on both sides of the ball. Yeah. On the defensive side of the ball, the line was all over Texas A&M's quarterback. On the offensive side of the ball, passing game wasn't right there, but they hit enough big plays and they just, carved out a niche to run the ball and really control Texas A&M. I can't say enough about this Arkansas team. Really, really looks like a good football team here.
Yeah, I'm really excited. I thought they came out with a game plan, executed really well. I was actually impressed to see some of the throws Jefferson made. People doubt his ability to throw, and he did enough to keep this offense moving and get a big score and put them up. And then that big defensive turnover that led to that field goal to get them a double-digit lead there in the fourth quarter, that was huge. Once they got that game was over. Yeah,
definitely so. You mentioned Jefferson. He doesn't seem to be like your precise quarterback, but he does enough. And when those defensive backs and safeties cheat up and go to that box, they hit that play action pass, and he seems to be able to hit those passes and hit enough big plays to where, you can't necessarily always cheat up on them. And then those guys up front just maul you to death. But Arkansas, really, really impressive so far.
Big game
Another big game coming up this week. No breaks for Arkansas, but I wanted to get into A&M a little bit. This is their second sort of, I'd say, dud game in a row. Do we overrate A&M coming in, or do you think it's, Colorado game you wipe off because the quarterback was out? This game you just wipe off that Arkansas looked like the better football team here.
Yeah, A&M's going to have to bounce back really quick. They got Mississippi State, I believe, this coming up week. But I think it's not the end of the year for A&M. I think they're still a good team. This could be just a really good Arkansas team that they lost to. And I think it is a really good Arkansas team. Now, we'll see what they can do through the rest of their SEC schedule. But they're going to have to find some more offense. They found it against the nobody teams, but that offense needs to show up against good teams.
Yeah, I think their hopes of beating Alabama. Probably. I don't know if A&M is going to be able to put the points on the board for that one. So anyway, A&M, a little bit disappointing, but I think overall just impressed with Arkansas football. We'll see if they can rev back up and do it again. A team not to be impressed by really either side, because NC State certainly tried to give this game.
They tried to lose it
numerous times, but Clemson's offense continues to be just awful. They can't run the ball. Their running back was not the savior, sadly enough. DJ became their leading rusher in this one. That's never a good thing. And at quarterback, he just continues to struggle. I don't know if Dr. Pepper wants their money back now or they're going to tax him on it later because we still got Spencer Rattler. How long do you think Clemson sticks around with what he's producing on offense? He was just brutally terrible. I don't know why he dropped off so bad from what we saw last year, but he's just a bad quarterback right now, and the Clemson offense is a bad offense right now.
Yeah, they only managed to get 14 points in regular time. So and NC State, in all honesty, should have won this. I think their kicker missed three field
kicks,
goals,
including the last one, which was about 32 yards.
Yeah, so Clemson had many opportunities to take this one and win it, in which in years past they probably would have, but just didn't have the leaders or the talent to take over and put this game away. But yeah, got to give NC State the credit. Their defense played solid, but I mean, Clemson hasn't really been putting up 3 touchdowns against anybody this year. I think this was
South Carolina State. They finished touchdowns.
But they're in some trouble going into the rest of this ACC schedule if they can't put points on the board. I mean, it's one thing to have a great defense, but if you can't put points on the board, you're not going to beat a lot of teams.
Yeah, I don't think this is the first time we're going to talk about Clemson losing games this year.
Well, especially since Clemson's been playoff or bust for the past 6 to 8 years now.
So unless a miracle happens, I think Clemson's going to lose numerous games. The fact that they're still ranked is possibly the most disturbing thing.
Transfer portal watch.
Yeah, I think so. It'll be interesting to see how this goes. I'm also curious about Dabo Swinney, if he goes more the Saban route and sticks around, or he goes the Urban Meyer route, and once things start to fall on a sinking ship, he pulls the trigger and manages to go somewhere else and reset that. So this is probably the first real test Dabo's had where a team is really, really bad on his watch. So we'll see what that does. Curious of what your thoughts on NC State are. Got handled by Mississippi State. They did win this game. I didn't think they looked overall all that impressive. I guess defensively, you could say they looked solid. They put up some yards on offense, but they just seem, I mentioned it about, West Virginia. They seem to be one of those teams who can play teams close. Yeah. And then they find a way to lose it in the end.
Yeah, I think this NC State team's going to end up having probably 4 or 5 losses. They don't look, I thought they would step up a little bit more over previous NC State teams. I think they're going to be right on the money of where they usually are, about, 7, 8 wins on the year. They get their big upset. And then they'll probably have a letdown and lose somebody they're not supposed to. They may prove me wrong, but I don't think so. I think this is the same NC State we've seen for many years.
Yeah, I think you got a good read on that. I think, we might see another upset. Maybe they can beat a Miami. Maybe they can beat a Wake Forest or a Boston College. But then they probably lose to a Duke or a Georgia Tech or a Virginia Tech, Syracuse. So nothing would shock me on that side of things. But I guess you sort of got to put them a little bit in ACC contender status, just because I think everybody right now in the ACC is
who knows,
contender status. So it should be an interesting year once conference play really gets started in the ACC. All right, next up, Notre Dame, Wisconsin, 41-13. This score is a little bit more lopsided than the game sort of was. But I did think overall Notre Dame was a better team pretty much all day long. They just Wisconsin gave them, I don't know, 4 turnovers in that fourth quarter. I don't remember. There were a lot of interceptions in that fourth quarter that really stretched this along. But I think once Notre Dame hit that touchdown right at the start of the fourth, maybe the end of the third, and it got to like 21-13, I thought this was pretty good.
That was in the fourth quarter. This thing was tied going into the fourth at 10-10. And this was a really good game. And, Cone was out.
Yeah.
It wasn't looking that, we were wondering if Notre Dame could hang on, and then just the turnovers started to come, and Notre Dame's defense really stepped up. Probably one of the best defenses in the country from what I've seen. And we'll see if Cone comes back next week. I don't think his injury was too serious.
I don't think it was that serious.
So if he can come back and
they've been splitting quarterbacks. So the other guy, while I don't think is as good.
He came in and he played really well.
At least experienced enough where I don't think the drop off would be something too tragic if Cone can't make his way.
This is probably the toughest. One of the toughest opponents Notre Dame's played this year, and it was actually the best they performed all year. I thought because Notre Dame's looked really sloppy in some games, but defense has really been carrying them. If they can get a little bit more production from their offense, this could be a playoff team. Yeah,
this is interesting because I think Notre Dame is sort of growing into this season. I mentioned last week versus Purdue, I thought that was the best they played. Then they played better this week. So they might have sort of had those 2 leaky games to start, found a way to win. Got a little bit better in that Purdue game, got a little bit better in this Wisconsin game. And, they still have a pretty tough schedule with a lot of teams on it who at least have some name value.
That big game this next week.
Yes. And then we'll see if they keep growing. The Cone injury probably has a little bit of a factor. I'm wondering if Wisconsin wants to make a trade and bring Cone back. I think I'm trying to bench every quarterback so far we talked about, but how long does Wisconsin stick with Mertz here? He had those 2 really great games to start last year, and since then he has been just brutal. And
it depends on. He had 2 pick sixes in the last 5 minutes of that game.
Maybe don't have those.
At that point the game was already done, and he's just trying to make something happen. I don't know how much you put that against him there, but I think Wisconsin, really their best bet is to play Wisconsin football and run the ball. And they haven't been as good at that this year as they are in years past. But, they've got another game. They're going to have to bounce back up. They got Michigan coming to their place this weekend.
They've owned Michigan. So I think that will pretty much, if they can't even get that one, I think we're, really down Wisconsin here in that one. We'll see if Mertz can get a little bit better.
I thought he would be a lot better at the beginning.
Yes, that's what there's a lot of turnovers there. There are some really nice passes. I will say he has a good arm, but it's sloppy. It's like Jameis Winston sloppy, except he's not quite as good as Jameis Winston to make up for such sloppy play. So interesting how they will bounce back. We'll go to Iowa, Colorado State here. Colorado State all of a sudden looks like an almost decent team. Goes into Toledo, wins that one. Plays Iowa pretty tough. I don't know how much you really sort of change your opinion here, because I think we've said Iowa's offense has been porous all year long. They're winning because their defense is here, but I think this was a little bit closer of a game than people thought.
Yeah, I'm wondering how much Iowa actually game planned for this one. I thought they just expected to come out and roll over Colorado State pretty easily. Got a little bit behind, but they came back in the second half, dominated the second half, took care of business.
Yeah, definitely. So Colorado State, do you think they can sort of turn this around? They haven't played a conference schedule yet. they seem to have gotten much, much better from the first two games of depth, where they lost to South Dakota State and then lost to Vandy, who, if anyone watched the Vandy play this weekend, I'm not sure they could have beaten a middle school team.
Yeah, I don't know if we're going to talk about that much, but Georgia almost outscored Vandy by more than the yards Vanderbilt scored or gained in that game.
Yes.
Vandy scored like 7 or got 70-something yards.
Yes.
Georgia scored 62 points. So
yes. So that was a bad one. Next up, Iowa State. They did not turn around early. Went into Baylor. They gained a lot of yards, did not score a lot of points. Purdy, once again, had a couple turnovers there that really sort of cost them. Baylor, 4-0, 2-0 in conference right now. I'm a little bit impressed with how they've started the season, but Iowa State's probably the thing here. Just not a good year for them right now.
I don't know if I'm fully bought into Baylor just yet. I think this is more of a reflection of Iowa State and just how much they've dropped off from last year. And, I heard some people talking on the radio this morning, should Matt Campbell have taken a job last year? Because I don't know how much of a people are going to be after him after this season, because this is probably not the last loss Iowa State's going to have this year. But I'll tell you what, I think they outgained Baylor by a few hundred yards. And how often do you see a team lose that has a running back rush for almost 200 yards and 2 touchdowns, and they still lose the game? But Baylor's defense made some big plays in key moments, and turnovers are generally what decides the game. And that's what did Iowa State in.
Yeah. I think I'm just curious what Baylor is. I think I've gotten burned by them 2 weeks in a row here. I thought they'd go up to Kansas and struggle. They didn't really struggle in that one, put points on them. Then I thought Iowa State sort of found their rhythm versus UNLV. And then UNLV played good over the weekend after Iowa State had killed them. And then Iowa State played like crap this week. So just disappointing in Iowa State. I thought they'd sort of get their Big 12 run off to a better start. But interesting to see where this Baylor team really sits. They'll have a little bit tougher competition, but I don't think coming into the season we thought they'd win this Iowa State game.
No.
So interesting to see where they go. I did like the unis for Baylor in the all bright yellow this week. So next up, Rutgers, Michigan. I think this was the entertaining fest we thought it would be. Michigan did not score any points in the second half, managed to get 20 in the first half and hold off Rutgers, but I'd say good win by Michigan, because they sort of did what this game sort of played out exactly how I think both you and I thought it would.
Yeah.
Just a tight defensive game with not much scoring. Rutgers couldn't find a way to make a last drive, but I'd say a pretty solid win for Michigan. It didn't take 4 overtimes this time.
Yeah, they got the win against what has been this year a solid Rutgers team. This was their first loss on the year. I had Rutgers plus 18.5. I didn't pick it on our show, couldn't quite get it, but got a W there. And just this is a different Michigan team than I think we're used to seeing in the past years. They're just so run heavy, and we'll see how that offense goes moving through this rest of this Big Ten schedule. Like we said, another big game against Wisconsin. Might take the under there. I don't know what that line is at, but if it's under 40,
well, it might be under 40 after watching this thing. So, and watching the 2 quarterbacks play for the teams.
We say that, and Mertz will come out and throw for like 6 touchdowns.
Finally, have a 6 touchdown with no interception game. But big ups to Michigan, found a way to win. It's not pretty right now, but I think that's okay. They're winning with their defense, winning with their running game, and sort of not having to have the quarterback sort of control the game and determine how they win or lose. It's a little bit like Arkansas, where, the quarterback needs to make a couple throws here and there, doesn't need to win them the game, just don't lose them the game and put them in bad positions.
Yeah.
And this guy has not done that so far. All right, next up. Speaking of teams who find ways to lose games and teams who find ways to win games, I think that pretty much summed up this game perfectly. I didn't see a lot of difference talent-wise on the field on this one, but Michigan State got a punt return for a touchdown to tie this up, then won in overtime. Nebraska couldn't make a drive down the stretch to win this, but Michigan State stays undefeated. Impressed with Michigan State, or sort of a sloppy 4-0 team that is finding its way into the season.
As somebody, this is one of my losses. I had Michigan State minus 5.5. I thought they would come out and perform a little bit better today, or in this game. But you could swap the uniforms on these teams and they would both be, one could play as Michigan State, the other could play as Nebraska. There was a very similar type of teams there. And just, like you said, the winners find ways to win when it comes down to crunch time. But Nebraska's been challenging a lot of teams. They've been looking a lot better than I thought they would this year. We'll see. Michigan State's got through some tough games. They got that big road win in Miami, but I don't know if they're going to have what it takes to beat the bigger teams in the Big Ten.
Well, I think you mentioned that Miami game was 17-14, with about 10 minutes left in that fourth quarter. Miami's driving, throws a pick. Michigan gets points off that. Miami does the ball again, throws another pick. Michigan does that, game over.
Yeah.
This one's very similar. Nebraska, sort of controlled this game. They stupidly punted to the one guy who can hurt them. Guy who has a punt return, tie game, try to make a drive. They can't make a drive. And then overtime, in college is just random. Martinez throws a pick, Michigan State kicks a field goal. Game over in that one. I thought you were going to get the win there in overtime because they drove down to the 2. And I like, he's going to sneak one in there. And then they decided to kick the field goal. Gambling, always fun.
I still had a pretty good week.
You did have a good week, but that one would have been a nice one to get. Sneak in there. It's just, Nebraska found a way to lose this game. Michigan State, which it's done all season long, found a way to win it. We'll see if they continue to find ways to win this game. I think this team's record looks a little bit shinier than what the team actually is. But that's something Mel Tucker has done for a long time. So, as long as they probably don't come up against Alabama or Ohio State of such, they're probably pretty good in the Big Ten wise. So be interesting to see if they can continue this streak. All right. Speaking of really weird, North Carolina, they either score 70 or don't score really any points at all and get waxed by teams that I don't think any of us thought too highly of. Georgia Tech scored 45 on North Carolina. North Carolina managed 22, and I think that was being kind. Because they didn't do anything the first half and were not much better in the second half till the very end of that game. I don't even know how to assess this. Georgia Tech just owned them, and North Carolina was terrible.
Yeah, just when I thought North Carolina had it figured out, I took them minus 12 and a half.
Take them to win the ACC conference. That's not going to happen.
No, I really thought they had things figured out offensively, but they just, they scored 22, but that last one was just junk there at the end, and Georgia Tech really dominated this game after North Carolina got up 7-0. They couldn't answer back to Georgia Tech, but really impressed by Georgia Tech, oddly enough. They just may be pretty good.
I know.
I didn't expect 45 points after only
I'd
scoring.
like my win total number back for that Northern Illinois game. Can we replay that in week 6 instead of week 1? Because I think Georgia Tech is actually good, and I'm still puzzled how they lost a game to Northern Illinois at home.
Still couldn't get enough points to beat Clemson last week, but
they were right there on the goal line to win that game. So,
but just dominated this North Carolina team, and we'll see if North Carolina manages to stay on the rails or if they're just going to completely lose this season.
Well, I think that's the thing. I think if you put like blanks over the two teams and you said who is the better team, and you watch this game, you'd be like Georgia Tech, much better team because they just dominated offensively, defensively. On everything you can dominate somebody on. Georgia Tech dominated this game. It wasn't even like a little fluky turnover here, get a play here.
No.
Georgia Tech just owned this game. So North Carolina, you try to figure them out the rest of the year. They might be going in the black book of do not gamble on this team for or against, because they might score 70 or they might score 20 and give up 50. So no telling what you're getting from North Carolina. And this one, I thought this was the most impressive game for UCLA I've seen. To bounce back, go into Stanford after that tough Fresno loss, and to go in there, really sort of dominate this game. I thought that was really, really impressive by UCLA. I think I'm more impressed with this win than the LSU win in week 1 or 2 for them.
Yeah, and really they were in control of this game going into halftime. And ended up putting it away in the fourth quarter. I had the over in this, barely got that. I think I got it by half a point or a point and a half, something like that. It was close. Started turning. The fourth quarter was really when it started getting to what I thought it would be. It was more back and forth game, but actually UCLA was really controlling the pace of this game from the get-go in a hostile road environment. So good bounce back win for Chip Kelly and UCLA.
Yeah, I thought that was just probably the most impressive I've seen from them. That leads me to believe that this is actually a contender in the Pac-12 and maybe even a playoff team. You know, I know they have that loss to Fresno, but Fresno's a good football team. You know, I don't, hold that against them. They could have just as easily have won that Fresno game. Those two teams were going back and forth that whole fourth quarter. So we'll see how UCLA goes. Really impressed by going into Stanford and getting that win off a tough loss the week before in Fresno. So good win by UCLA. Next up, Kansas State let us down a little bit here. But I think Oklahoma State is in the Michigan State category of 4-0. They find ways to win. I will say their offense is starting to look a little better each week. I mean, I wouldn't, say it's great. It seems to play well for sections than full games. But really, I think the biggest thing here was, Kansas State fumbled a ball in the end zone going in for a score. And they fumbled the ball on their own side of the field that led to a scoop and score. That's pretty much a 28-point swing there. And Oklahoma State ended up winning 31-20. What'd you make of this one?
Yeah, I thought Kansas State was going to win this game. I thought they were the better team. We were kind of giving people crap because people weren't giving Kansas State enough credit for what they'd done on the year. But just turnovers killed them. We can't preach that enough. Turnovers determine games for the most part, and especially in bad situations.
Well, it's not just like turnovers, like middle of the field.
I mean,
turnovers. It's turnovers that cost you a touchdown. It's turnovers that give them a touchdown. Those are just killers, and they're really spread killers as well.
Now they tried to claw their way back into this, but it was just too big of a hole. And they couldn't get quite back into it. And Oklahoma State was doing enough offensively. I still don't know if they've got enough on the offensive side to
I will say this, like if they get up like they did, I think it's a very, very difficult team to sort of come back on because they can run the ball enough. They seem to have found that running game, and their defense, actually, I will give that credit. Their defense is a pretty solid defense, especially for a Big 12 defense. They're really pretty good. So if they get up like they did and Kansas State hands them points, then they, are difficult to come back on. Boise State found out the week before. Now, a little officiating stuff went down with that one as well. But anyway, they've seemed to, if they can get up, it's not always pretty. They can hold on and find ways to win in that one. All right, next up, LSU Mississippi State. This was really a pretty good game. Mississippi State had all the yards. LSU found ways to win. This was probably the most impressive performance I've seen LSU have in a really, really long time. Tough to go into Mississippi State and win. They went in there, handled that pretty well. I will say the defense gave up a lot of yards, but I think that's becoming Mississippi State's thing. They seem to rack up a lot of yards, can't seem to rack up enough points here.
Well, I was watching this game, and I can tell LSU pretty much studied nothing but game film from last year's game because they were coming up. They weren't giving up those dink and dunk passes like they normally do. Now they still gave up a lot of yardage, but, that's all Mississippi State does is throw the ball. They don't run the ball at all. And I thought LSU probably won this more than the score indicates. Mississippi State came back there towards the end, but LSU had this in control for the 3 quarters of the game and had enough to hold on. So good win in a bad hard road environment. There was a lot of cowbells going on and stuff. So we'll see if LSU can keep it going.
Yeah, definitely. Like I said, I thought this was probably the most impressive LSU performance I'd seen in probably a year and a half. They controlled this game. This is the first time I've really seen them control a game both offensively and defensively. Can they keep it up? I don't know, but this was a good start, and we'll see how they push forward in the SEC. Maybe they can sort of make themselves a contender in the SEC West. There's a lot of teams to jump through.
Oh yeah.
Auburn, not one of them, by the way. We did get into Bo Nix era, I think, though. So
Yeah.
I did not put that in our games of the week, but that should probably be our storyline of the week.
No more Bo Nix.
I might not have to talk about Bo Nix.
I don't know. Does he have eligibility? Transfer portal?
Oh, well, that probably is something. It's
Playing for the Vols next year.
That would be fitting. Find another quarterback who can't complete passes deep down the field. All right, next up, Boston College had a nice overtime win here, 41-34 over Missouri. I still don't know what Mizzou is. I might not know all year long. They seem to be able to find ways to do offense, but they also seem to turn the ball over a whole lot, which is sort of why Boston College ended up with a win here. We mentioned Boston College probably would pull back a little bit on that passing game with the quarterback in there and run the ball more. They did that. They ran all over Mizzou. So once again, I think Boston College is a pretty solid team, but I think I would have been really interested if that quarterback hadn't broken his arm there and see what this team is. Because I think they really have really good balance on the offensive side of the ball, both running and passing. But with this quarterback in here, they aren't quite as explosive, but they did get this win. Mizzou, I just have no way to gauge what they are. They don't seem to be great defensively. They seem to have the mistake thing where they can rack up yards, but they also seem to turn the ball over a ton. So what did you make of this one?
Yeah, I think the physicality of Boston College is the difference in this game. Just controlling the line of scrimmage, being able to run the ball well, and it's like you said, if they had their quarterback they started the year with, they'd be a little bit more balanced. But still love how they play power football.
Yes,
and I'm interested to see how they go into the rest of this ACC schedule. I was a little disappointed. I thought we were going to have a really good overtime, and Mizzou just kind of gave it away there at the end. I mean, didn't even really have an offensive possession. They were just like, "Oh, here, game over."
Yes.
And then I didn't know beating Missouri at home week 4, unranked Missouri was worthy of storming the field, but apparently it was. So kind of shocked me there. I guess they'll enjoy their fine over winning a Missouri team.
My mom keeps telling me Missouri is an SEC team, so. I'm like, they're a Big 12 team that got invited to the SEC. So anyway, they got their big win versus the SEC powerhouse of Mizzou.
But, Boston College undefeated 4 weeks in.
Yeah, I know. I just wish they had that quarterback. He might actually have been the best quarterback in the country, considering what we've seen from the other best quarterbacks of the country so far this year. Anyway, I'm going to need you to explain this next one.
Well, I don't think we talked about this in the previous
We did
show,
not.
but we're going to have to talk about it today.
It was axed off in the games of the week. I will say I want my Colorado money back because I thought Minnesota was a joke. They somehow were not a joke versus Colorado, but we're very much a joke versus, Bowling Green, 30-point dog Bowling Green. Bowling Green, who had one win versus a subdivision team, and even that wasn't as clean as you might think. Goes into Minnesota, wins 14-10. How does this even occur? I'm assuming Minnesota's practice squad players are better than what Bowling Green is trotting out there.
Yeah, I think Minnesota's due for a coaching change. I think the time is up there.
Well, much like Matt Campbell, we all love PJ Fleck too, and we're trying to give him jobs everywhere in the country.
I don't know how much that boat's rowing after losing to Bowling Green.
I didn't watch any of this game. I rewatched it Sunday morning because I knew we would have to talk about it. And honestly, watching it, other than Minnesota's awful quarterback play, I still don't quite understand how Bowling Green won this game. They made a couple plays in the passing game. Their defense was solid. Once again, I don't know how their defense was solid because it's been atrocious all year long. So I don't even know what to make of this and how it was even possible for Minnesota to lose this game, even if their quarterback play was terrible.
Yeah, they just came out of sleep.
Yeah, but even then, that's one of those where you can come out of sleep and you still end up with a win and you just grumble about how awful you were. I guess they didn't, but PJ Fleck, maybe not quite the great coach. Motivational speeches only go so far. You actually have to win football games out there. It's not a motivational speech conference. All right. This one was a really entertaining game.
Yeah, I went back and rewatched this one.
I thought it would be an entertaining game. I very much wanted to take SMU. I stupidly look at the history of this, and TCU would own them until last year. So it talked me out of it. And then SMU, of course, goes in there and beats TCU 42-34. I think the SMU team might be a pretty decent team. They actually might be the Conference USA or AAC team that we like, not Houston, but really was impressed with SMU here.
Yeah, I think it's actually more telling for TCU, in my opinion.
Yeah.
I just think the defense that they've come to know, they've had probably, in the Big 12,
Yes.
teams not known for defenses. Historically, in the past decade, TCU's had the best defense of the Big 12, and it just hasn't been here this year. We thought this was going to be a good baseline game for them this year, and I just don't think this TCU is quite there, and we could see this happen a few more games down.
Yeah, I think so. You mentioned it. Their defense did not look as good. They still managed to force turnovers, but they don't seem to get stops. It's become sort of a Central Florida, style defense where they can make the turnovers, but they aren't getting stops. And their offense isn't quite up to like Central Florida level where they can score every time down. I was a little bit disappointed with Max Dunger in this game. He still he's very sort of hot and cold. There are times when you look at him and think, oh, really good quarterback. And there are times when you're just like, eh. And that seems to be where TCU is. I think they probably are in the NC State level where I think they can pull some upsets, but I think they might lose a couple games they probably shouldn't as well.
They'll probably finish around 7-8 wins, I'd say.
I think so. All right, next up, this will be a difficult one to talk about a little bit. Utah safety got shot and was killed a party over the weekend after this game. So it's going to be, had this game penciled in and it was like, I loved the way Utah played. It looked more like the Utah team. Do you think they can make a push now in the Pac-12? Things sort of change here when you lose your starting safety and when you don't even think so. So I don't know how they're going to bounce back from that, but I thought they played pretty well in this Washington State game defensively, and they looked a little bit better on the offensive end, sort of controlling things.
Yeah. Forgive me if I don't remember their names at the moment, but this guy was wearing the number of the guy who was shot and killed last year.
Yes.
They both came from the same high school. So it's really tragic story there, but I think it's the same, Utah got the win, but it's the same story for them. Quarterback play just hasn't been there this year. Yeah.
This guy didn't turn it over, at least. I think that's possibly the key to them getting better. Now we'll see how they, bounce moving forward after, it's now 2 times in 2 years where their starting players has been shot and killed. So we'll see how that goes. Tough one to talk about. I had it marked down, before this all happened to, preview whether Utah might be able to make a push here. There were no turnovers this game. Defense looks strong, but we'll just see. It's sort of a wait and see thing. We'll go to Louisville and Florida State. Louisville offense looked awesome at times, looked weird at times. Defense looked shaky at times, and then good at times. So what'd you make of Louisville? We don't really have to get in Florida State. They aren't a good football team.
Yeah, I think the score was closer than it should have been. And I think that's partly because Louisville's just their inconsistencies. I picked them to win this game and I felt really good about it early and I didn't feel so good about it. And then I started feeling good about it again. Like you said, they turn it off and on and good teams don't do that. So I'm really concerned about this Louisville team going forward for the rest of their schedule, but they got the win, but this is a really bad Florida State team. They lack any kind of winning culture there. They've got good players, but just a lot of mentality issues, I think, and they just don't come out prepared and they lose their composure really quickly.
Yeah. Louisville is an ACC contender. Too hot and cold because I mean there are plays where you watch them play where it's like I think they have the most talent of some of these ACC teams on there. There was a huge play that Cunningham made where he just dropped like a 60-yard pass on the money in there. It just seems I can't quite grasp. Well, it's like a better version of Mizzou. I cannot grasp a hold of what they actually are.
I'd feel a lot better about Louisville in the ACC moving forward if they had won this game by 30 points.
Yeah,
they should have. Now, it was a road game going into Doak Campbell, but they were a much better football team than Florida State.
Yes.
And they did not put them away. They let Florida State hang around, and it was still, it only ended up being an 8-point game. That's one score game. They're much better than one score than this 0-4 Florida State team who I'm wondering when they're going to get a win.
Yeah, it will probably be a while from what I've seen. Next up, this one was a hard one to watch. Kentucky came out with the win, continues to own South Carolina, 16-10. Really, I don't know what to say. I don't fancy either of these teams as very good teams. I thought Kentucky was brutal to watch. Their quarterback play, once again, is below par. They did manage to run the ball like they've always seemed to do. Defense seems solid enough. Really hard to gauge that because South Carolina's offense was so poor. Their defense seemed okay, but really just two bad teams. But Kentucky came out to win, and Kentucky's 4-0 right now. So what'd you make of this one?
This game went exactly as I thought it was going to. I didn't think Kentucky would put South Carolina away, and I was hoping South Carolina would get a little bit more points. I would have taken them if had they been getting a touchdown. They were only getting 5.5. Glad I didn't jump on it. It was 6 points, but for some reason I can't get off the South Carolina team and the fight they have. I still
they play hard. They just don't have a lot of skill.
I picked them as probably the 13th best team in the ACC. Their record may reflect that, but I like their fight a little bit more than some other teams.
It reminds me a little bit of that Arkansas team last year where, there wasn't a lot of talent on there. They'd at least come to play every week. They didn't quit in this game, but they just aren't very good.
So we'll see, first year coach, if he can get some talent in there, maybe he can build a culture there.
Well, I think that'll be the key, getting talent into South Carolina. You'll have a
Clemson losing.
Well, that's what you'll have a little window maybe before Clemson retools in there. Speaking of the pretty much same game as the one before with a little bit more points, but Washington and Cal 31-24. Cal seems to be one of those teams that can always play a close game, but never find a way to win said close game. Washington got the overtime win 31-24. Washington got out to a hot start, didn't do much in the second half. Cal worked their way back, had a field goal to win the game at the end, didn't make it, and then lost in overtime. What'd you make of this?
Yeah, I bet on Washington not finding their offense, and for 2 weeks in a row, they've scored points. I'm surprised that it happened against a solid defense in Cal. I thought this game got out of hand a lot quicker than I thought it would. And Cal just doesn't produce enough offensively to dig out of that kind of a hole.
Especially when they had a couple of turnovers on this one. And if they turn the ball over, they just probably aren't good enough to sort of make their way, even though they did have a field goal to win the game. But anyway, Washington getting a little bit momentum. 2 wins in a row.
Clean conference record,
1-0 over Cal. So we'll see how they go going forward. It still looks very similar to what we've seen, but the offense at least has put points on the board that week. All right. Lastly, I think the Kelvin Slovis era, if probably would have come to a close in this game if the quarterback hadn't gotten hurt in midweek, because he was once again all over the map in this one and was terrible. Oregon State goes in there and beats them 45-27 and owns them. Really good win for Oregon State, though. I think they're going to hit their over and maybe a fringe little contender there in the Pac-12 North. Not quite. One, but Mike could battle in there for that 2 spot.
Well, we'll see. The big week they host Washington coming up, so that'll be really telling on the Pac-12 standings between those two last 2 teams we just talked about. But USC just has no fight left in them. They're toast. Stick a fork in them. They're done, and it could get even uglier. Yeah,
I think it would have been interesting if that quarterback who took over in Washington State had been in there, because they looked feisty with him in there. They don't look feisty with Slovis in there. So
too many turnovers.
Yes, way too many turnovers. So I think everybody's draft QBs coming into the season: Rattler, Slovis, DJ. They don't look like NFL quarterbacks,
No.
let alone college quarterbacks at the moment. So interesting. Take that what you will for preseason and high school rankings as you look going forward. Anyway, so those are our games of the week. Let's get into our picks of the week. And you got back on track this week.
Yep.
Good week for you. You hit that Kent State, Maryland under 68.5, UCLA, Stanford over 58.5.
I think hit that by half a point.
Just snuck that one in there. Kansas State, Oklahoma State. We mentioned the turnovers cost you on that one at +6. Florida Atlantic Air Force under 52.5. Good call there. I don't know why anyone was on the Florida Atlantic bandwagon. I was listening to a podcast and everybody was talking about how Florida Atlantic is going to go in there and throw all over airports. They did not. They were lucky to move the ball at all in that game, and Air Force just owned them. Cal +7.5 versus Washington. Nice win there. Cal Washington under 46.5. Overtime.
Yep.
All right, North Carolina -12.5 versus
Worst
Georgia
loss
Tech.
of the week.
That one marked off. I think North Carolina might be going in your black book as well. Western Michigan -3 versus San Jose State. That one sort of played out, I think, how we both thought it would.
They dominated.
Yeah, they dominated the game. San Jose State looked tired and like they had just been to Hawaii, to San Jose, and then to Kalamazoo. So tough little road trip there for San Jose State. That would have been one preseason we probably should have stared at a little bit and been like, wow, they're going to Hawaii and then Kalamazoo in back-to-back weeks. That's a little bit difficult of a run there. Louisville -2.5 versus Florida State was a win. West Virginia +17.5 versus Oklahoma was a win. Tough one to not get your money line there. I thought you had that one, but West Virginia doesn't like to win football games. They just like to stay in football games.
Yep.
Michigan State -5 versus Nebraska was a loss. 7-4 on the week. Makes you overall 30-29-1. So you bounced back and been really good other than that one week 3 where
Yep. We're
had
gonna
a
keep
bad
it.
week
We're gonna
in
keep it
there.
rolling. I've already locked in a bunch of picks for this upcoming week, so I'm looking forward to our show.
Our
Thursday.
early pick man. He's the one who's sitting
Yeah.
there refreshing on that Sunday, waiting for those lines.
I
just
like
to
those
pop
early
up.
lines. You know, sometimes it bites me in the butt, but sometimes you can get some really good value on those early lines.
All right. Overall, I went 6-6 on the week. Still can't seem to get over that 500 hump in the week on my bets. I did give you another parlay winner, 4-teamer. That's 12-1. That's always good money to win. I also gave you 3 upset special money line bets on the week. So not winning in my straight bets, but finding a way to make a little bit of money there in my parlay. So that's 4 parlay wins on the year, and probably about 7 upset specials on the year that I've won. But 6-6 on the week. Mississippi State +2. Tough loss there. Never fun to lose 1 by 3 when you have 2. Toledo -5 was a winner. Purdue did not look great versus Illinois this week at -11. That was a tough game, but I will say Illinois, not pretty to watch, but
Scrappy.
sort of scrappily stays in these games. Iowa State -7 was a loss. That's probably my least favorite one because that game I had wrote off in the second quarter. Rutgers +20 was a win. Kansas +16 was a loss.
You done with Kansas?
No, I'm never done with Kansas. I would have liked them to get my backdoor cover as they were driving down and just let the game run out. Kansas State +5.5 was a loss. Good win on the Western Kentucky +9. UAB +3 was a winner. California +8 was a winner. New Mexico State. I want to thank Hawaii for scoring a touchdown with a minute to go to cover that spread. That one was a fun one. It also cost me a parlay, but anyway. Arkansas, Texas A&M under 48.5. That one was way under it. So 6-6 on the week, 27-34-2 overall on the straight bets. Week 5 coming into it.
Yep.
Another good week.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good plays. Like I said, I've already locked a bunch in, so really excited for a good show and a good college football weekend.
So be sure to catch us on Thursday. Like and subscribe so you don't miss any of our shows. We'll be back tomorrow with Achilles Reign to review the NFL games. So, like, subscribe. That's our show, and we're out.
Greenlight Network presents Football Time.